Gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm a gentleman.
No, I was. So
I
So-
need, yes, myself and then more.
Was that?
let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we can get a motion to accept tonight's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
So we now move on to our district updates. Dr.
So good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. First meeting of 2020. Certainly, every new year brings some excitement and sometimes transition. As everyone knows, Dr. Kaur is retiring this week, and while not present in the room, she'll be back shortly here. But Friday is Dr. Kaur's last day. Going back almost 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, we had the pleasure of introducing Mary Ellis to the Irvington School District as our interim assistant superintendent for instruction and human resources. Mary, in a week and a half, I think has been through about a month's worth of meetings, information, meet and greets, and is really becoming well acquainted with our schools. We're pleased to welcome Mary. She has really brought a lot of energy, care, and concern to our schools already, and is quickly forming lots of relationships and going around meeting all the folks in all of our schools last week. She was so warmly received, and you can see those follow-up conversations happening already with personal connections. And Mary is one of those folks that's a student of a system, wanting to learn, but at the same time has lots of ideas to help us continue to take those steps forward. Just by way of record for the public, Mary comes to us having been the Director of Curriculum and Instruction in the Mount Pleasant School District. Preceding that, she worked in the Harrison School District, where she was a Director of Fine and Performing Arts, and before that, a supervisor for ELA and Social Studies, and of course, a teacher before that. So it is my pleasure, Mary, to welcome you to the team.
Thank you so
Say
much.
a few words.
Thank you. It's been quite a whirlwind. 7 days now. And it's been really wonderful. Dr. Harrison took me around to each of the faculty meetings to introduce me, and as you said, it was a lovely, really, really warm reception. It's very clear to me that Irvington is a very, very special place. People have just been so warm, so welcoming, so helpful. There's a tremendous amount to learn. You know, there's a lot to the job that existed in my previous role, but every district is different, every culture is different, every building is different. So I'm really working right now very, very hard to get to know everybody and identify those places where I can contribute to the district. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Excited, thank you.
Great. And so aside from welcoming Mary, there's a lot of other big things happening across the district. Some exciting news related to some staff and students to share. We want to congratulate one of our students who is a semifinalist in the annual Regeneron Science Talent Search. We want to congratulate Rashik Gupta, who's been named top scholar in the 79th annual Regeneron Science Talent Search, the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and mathematics competition for high school seniors. Only 300 students were recognized out of 2,000 applicants across the country, which is quite an extraordinary accomplishment. He will receive a $2,000 scholarship and will also be in the running for a finalist position, as you can imagine. He'll be one of the 40 finalists who will each have the opportunity to receive further grants and scholarship opportunities further through the process. So we're very, very proud. I believe Rashid is the 7th student in Irvington history to be able to receive such recognition, and I would note that I think 5 of them have happened in the last 3 years. So it really speaks to the growth of our science research program and the excellent work that our faculty is doing there as well. On the heels of that, our science research program recently was evaluated by the University at Albany, which really is the accrediting source for that, as our students can receive college credits for U at A. And in doing so, they went through a thorough process where they observed lessons, interviewed students, looked at student work product, the overall success of our program. And in doing so, our program received the overall highest rating of distinguished, which is something, again, for us to be quite proud of. Pivoting a little bit, but more fantastic news as it relates to work that's happening with the adults in our school district again. Stephanie Schilling, who is one of our high school science teachers, she is on our coaching staff for the Merge Shetty swim team. She was recently named Coach of the Year by Lowhead, so we congratulate Stephanie and thank her for all of her work. Also, throughout the course of this year, we have talked about the work that the district has done on the data security and data privacy front. And recently, this school year, we rolled out our new portal that lists all of the different applications that we utilize and provides links to all the data privacy policies for the different companies and vendors that we utilize in our school district. The folks at RIC 1, which is a consortium of all the RICs across New York State that has taken a lead on this front for education, has been very impressed with the work that we've been doing internally and is actually borrowing models of work that we've done, work that Mr. Strumwasser, our Director of Technology, has done, is going to use that as best practice in upcoming training sessions that they're using. So something else for us to be proud of here in Irvington. And the last couple things that I just want to share as FYIs, that we are in that normal cycle of beginning to develop our calendar for the upcoming school year. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, out of the gate, we know we have a bit of a complex situation in looking at how the calendar unfolds, with Labor Day being as late as it possibly can. My first pass at looking at to develop a calendar was looking at our traditional approach of bringing staff in early, and as we've done once before since the time that I've been here, looking to potentially bring students and faculty back before Labor Day. However, some of those plans seem to be shifting based upon our need for time during the summer as associated with construction. So when we look at all the work that is going to be occurring this summer and next, and in our meetings with B&G and all of our professional partners, it's become abundantly clear that our architects and our construction manager are seeking as many days and hours as we can possibly capture during the summer months. So based upon their needs and the recommendations, and to ensure that we don't have construction getting in the way of an opening of school, we are beginning to look at models of calendar that would actually be bringing students and faculty back following Labor Day weekend. So I am in the process of developing some drafts, which, as you can imagine, I run by the bargaining units for feedback, and then we'll be presenting drafts to the board for your review before I present publicly next month. As a part of this process and recognizing the situation that we face, I think it's appropriate to start to share some communication with our school community, help them understand the direction we're headed, or I foresee us heading, because as you can imagine, a lot of folks would be eager to make plans, whether for vacation and the like, and now is hot time to begin doing so. So more to come on that front, unless there's questions from the board tonight, of course.
Typically, when does the state release the rating date?
Yeah, any day now, sort of thing. Right now, the assumption rating day is anticipated to be June 25th, which is a Friday. So essentially, when that is the official last day in New York State, so we kind of work backwards from that to identify our 180 instructional days. We build in our snow days and our superintendent's conference day. So the trick will be looking at the calendar to be able to fit in all of our contractual superintendent's conference day, rating day in Irvington, and the only times that it has been in instructional days when we've had excessive emergency closures, back to the hurricane, I recall, being 1 year. So we actually have to look for 5 days in addition to the 180 student days. So what will be very complicated and may be kind of a double-edged sword, where some folks and some families may appreciate the longer summer break that we may have before us. We may result in a shortened winter recess. Rather than having a full week in February, it may be like a long weekend like many districts have outside of our immediate region. And that said, a couple important events coming up. We have the Main Street Winter Concert just around the corner this Thursday at 7 p.m. And I want to draw everyone's attention to high school's communication yesterday and my letter today announcing that on January 22nd, the administration is going to be hosting an open community forum to collect feedback and engage our community in dialogue about some of the objectives that we could be looking at in any revisions related to the master schedule at the high school. So there's lots of opportunity for dialogue, so community members are encouraged to come out, connect with our school administration who are interested to hear your feedback and thoughts about what is important. Communication that went out directly out from the high school and was posted on the district and high school website specifically gives some structure and framework to the meeting that Matt and Juliet are going to facilitate. There will be a session in the morning as well as in the evening, so we hope folks can come out. The only ask that I would have at this point is if you check on the website and the communications that went out to make sure you RSVP so we can plan for your attendance. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
one thing that someone noted for me is not every parent knows where the Mara Lounge is.
Yes. Yeah, we'll clarify. I would say Ms. GM and I were having a conversation only a few hours ago, and we were talking about a follow-up communication related to the location.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to our committee reports, and I guess I'll start with B&G, and Carol, of course, will correct everything that I get wrong or add to it. So, we've had several B&G meetings over the last month or so, and what we're focused on at this point is coming up with the definitive schedule and timetable for what work will get done over the summer and into next year, so we can be able to come back and present to the board a list of what's going to happen and when. As we've talked about, some of the work at Dow's is slated for this summer, fixing the boiler and some of the other work there, and working on enclosing the campus here is also one of the projects that we're hoping to get done over the summer. At this point, it looks like the bleacher work will probably start immediately after the football season, because that, we're being told, is a long lead time item, and everyone tries to get it in over the summer, so it's even a longer lead time if you are shooting for that. And given the SED approval process, we don't think we'll be able to make that window. So right now, that is the initial thinking, but stay tuned. We'll come back hopefully in the next month or so with more information on the schedule. Our construction manager noted that they've been seeing bids coming in higher on the projects that they've been doing. They did caveat that a lot of what they're seeing is in the structural steel area, and we don't have a lot of structural steel as part of our project, so hopefully that won't impact us. And for at least for now, they think our contingencies are sufficient, but they're constantly pricing out things, and as the designs get further developed, they'll be able to come back to us with more pricing information. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we talked about. And then the other thing, to piggyback on what Dr. Harrison said, our construction manager made the comment essentially that every day that they can get over the summer is like a week of real time. So that really started the thinking of trying to get as much time for them to work over the summer without people here, to try to take advantage of that. So that's now really informing our thinking on the project and the timing and how we're developing the calendar.
It's a real jigsaw puzzle with who parks where, if it's going on at the same, work is going on at the same time as the open session.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, there will be some work that will happen during the school year, such as the bleacher project, and there may be
lighting and card access projects that can be done at off hours, but in terms of actual substantial construction, we're trying to get as much done for the buildings over the summer. So, Carol, anything else to add? So,
Do you want to just mention the Eagle project? Eagle Scout project?
no.
No? Okay then.
Communications.
So, let's see, that was back a month ago, wasn't it? And I hope Chris will correct me if I leave anything out. So I think we talked a little about a particular group that Chris had met with and engaged with in the public, and that was outside of the coffees that he had been doing this year, so that the sort of generally scheduled, so ways that Dr. Harrison had been making himself available for public contact. But so his work with so some of the parents that were interested in sustainability and in some environmental concerns really does kind of, I think, piggyback well onto that sort of public outreach that was a part of his goals this year. So I think that was a good part of the discussion was on that topic. Was there anything else that?
No, so it was kind of a skeleton crew for the committee meeting, I recall that day, but we certainly talked about that. And in addition to that, and related to it possibly is the last two district newsletters have promoted upcoming coffees. So there I'll have a series of 4 coffees this winter and spring that will be both in Terrytown and in Irvington. 3 of them will be hosted in local businesses to support our business partners, and one of them will be in the evening at the Irvington Public Library. We've had some conversations related to beginning to look at developing a more active Instagram page. We have an Instagram page that we've used in affiliation with our Project Lead the Way, or STEM program. Mr. Hanna had suggested some exploration looking at a district-wide level, so we're talking about some structures there, and we'll be following up at our meeting next week on some details. And then finally, we're coming back to the goal that Maura had referenced. I think the committee's going to dig in to look for some more focus group opportunities for us to be able to see what steps we can take to continue to enhance our communication plan in the school district, and to hopefully get some of those efforts underway before the close of this school year. And then finally, the last thing I would mention is that we're continuing to update the district website with all new information on a regular basis. Ms. Stein is working on updating the capital project page that's done. So we have updates to that page that have occurred, and continue to point our community members to our communication folder on the website, which has a wonderful inventory of years' worth of communications, either from the Board of Education, from the district, from me personally. So if you want to be a student of the district and our efforts to communicate, there's a great inventory of our efforts there on that front. And I'd also mention that before we know it, we'll be talking about our annual school quality survey, and we'll be looking to launch that in March as well. So lots of exciting stuff happening on the communications front.
Great. Policy?
So Policy Committee met on December 18th. I think a great deal of we were talking about a number of policies in the 5,000 series, but one of the big conversations, I think Dr. Harrison would agree, was about 5,100 student attendance, which is a pretty broad and deep policy. And there's a lot of, as we've discussed in other board conversations, impact of student attendance on academic learning and also on social and emotional learning. So after very spirited conversation, it's been transferred, is this right, Dr. Harrison, to academic council? No, administrative council.
Very close.
Right. So we'll get a report back later, and then it will come back to Policy Committee. And then, interestingly, there was a very I don't know, enthusiastic conversation of what is policy 5140, which has to do with kindergarten age decisions made by school districts. And we were going to return to discussing that at our policy meeting tomorrow. However, right before Christmas break, the state legislature passed some new laws concerning that and concerning choices as can be made by parents versus decisions to be made by the school district. And the committee agreed that we need to wait for more advice, actually from the New York State Education Department, to understand its impact. But we'll be excited to hear what that is.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's something in looking at the movement of that date certainly poses lots of challenges when we think about students' readiness. You think about initially year one, you're inevitably going to be capturing more students, so you're going to see impacts in enrollment. That would be a one-time bump potentially. Then we think it would normalize, of course. But it brings in question in thinking about, level of readiness and where kids are going to be. So we're eager to see what's going to happen there, and of course we'll look forward to that conversation here in this room. And then
I think that was basically the focus.
yeah, and the only other thing that I would add to that is that we wrapped up some questions that were looming from the fall related to the 4000 series. There was a final set from the 4000 series, which was distributed to the Board of Education last week, and we'll be looking for a first read of those policies at the next Board of Education meeting on the 28th.
Thank you. Our liaison reports, CAB. Reports.
We had a CAB meeting actually this morning, and last December, I'm going to get the acronym wrong. Presented from the
Yeah, I don't remember.
Just describe it.
Yes, I actually wasn't there for last month's meeting, but I was there when this group came to present to CAB. It's kind of like a new organization about social and emotional stigmas with that people have, whether with depression and things like that. They presented last year, and a lot of the adults felt that they needed to hone their skills, and they came back this year, and while I wasn't there last month, it appeared that they've made a lot of changes to their presentation, and this week was this meeting was kind of the debrief from that last meeting, and there was a lot of good feedback from the kids. CAB is very fortunate. They have a lot of students involved who are very vocal, and I think represent the student body very well, and providing the adults and who ultimately can turn around and make things happen with the money that's given to IS from the county. So they talked about the next speaker in the speaker series that's coming in April. They have De-Stress Week.
De-Stress Fest.
Best Fest. It's a fair that they're having later on this week for the students right before midterms. And then we broke out into sessions, and what was exactly the prompt question? Because I know we just got into the conversation, but I never knew what the prompt question was.
How do we manage stress during midterm season?
So in my little group, and then so we all met in little groups, and then we came back together, and everyone reported out from their individual groups. So it was very interesting. The kids shared some ideas of how they could, not procrastinate and study and get ready for midterms. A couple of things that came out in the discussion, it was great having our principal there from the high school, because I think she had some interesting takeaways, maybe thinking forward. But one of the things the kids liked was that they have the extra day this weekend with Martin Luther King on Monday, because they feel everyone is slamming everything in because it's the end of the marking period, and then they go into midterms. So it's like they really can't prepare for midterms, and I thought one of the students shared something very interesting, who is in 11th grade, how in 9th and 10th grade they were he didn't say spoon-fed, but they were given a lot more guidance as to what would be on the midterm, and now that they're juniors, it's kind of like he feels like teachers are now more hands-off, and he's like, well, getting ready for college, so, it's the way it's going to be, but how they're feeling this stress, and they're looking forward to Stress Fest to see, because, and they know this is life, I guess. Yes.
Thank you. IEF, anything to report?
They're meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.
Okay. So,
Curriculum committee,
Did it meet?
We did
we
meet.
did not meet the last 2 meetings, but we are set to meet on February 5th.
We are.
Okay.
To West Butt.
yeah.
So, the Westchester Putnam School Board Association had both its board meeting and also an advocacy council or committee, legislative advocacy committee meeting that Beth Cropper was also able to attend. And I'm going to reopen my notes, which were open a minute ago. A lot of it is information that we'll be hearing from Chris and Carol around the budget presentation, but a lot of the news is coming out now. The governor has been giving in dribs and drabs his State of the State address. Not a ton of detail and not necessarily promising for our district. There was news that came out today, too, that our tax cap levy would be 1.8%. But the big news that everybody's aware of is that because the state is trying to keep their tax increases around, I guess, 2%, if I understand correctly, it's creating a $4 billion gap in Medicare. And what was being shared yesterday is that there's an effort to shift that cost to our counties, which ultimately is us as local taxpayers. So there was discussion about how to address that, potential ways to push back. But there's concern, not unlike after the recession, where we all remember that money was being taken away from education to pay for the state budget. And while it may not come directly out of explicit school funding, it will still come out of our local pockets. So it's definitely something to pay attention closely to. And just a quick recap, our state budget's around $160 billion. Medicaid is around $50 billion plus, and state aid for education is around $26.7 billion. So those are the general numbers that we're coming off of from the prior year. And a piece of homework that I'd like to follow up with you, Carol, is in advocating for our region. We'd like to we're meeting with area legislators in our region, for the state legislators, on the 30th. People are welcome to attend from the board. And it's our opportunity to hear from them and also speak to them. And one idea that we were looking to share is to, with what we have available under a tax cap, looking at prior years, how much of that is eaten up by pension and health care, so that before we even start talking about what opportunities may be available to us or what we have to do with instruction, that money's gone right away. And one final note that I'd love to get the statistic and then share it is, every year if there is even an incremental increase to state aid, it's a new record spend. But there is a stat that someone put together that shows that education aid relative to the budget has been relatively flat over the last couple decades. So it shouldn't sound as impressive as it does when certain politicians get out there and say it's higher than ever, because it hasn't changed that dramatically relative to our state budget. So that's the type of conversation we're having. The 30th, the meeting with our local state legislators is an opportunity, and then from there, we'll probably develop some advocacy opportunities that we'll circle back to the board and administration about.
Great, thank you very much.
Michael, I just want to correct one thing that you said.
Yeah.
Because you said the tax
cap, the levy cap increase was 1.81.
Yeah.
And that's only part of the formula.
Yes, there's more to it, obviously. That's the starting figure.
Right, so that, I don't want people to realize that that's the number that's going to be, it's going to be that plus the growth factor.
Yes.
Which is about 1.088, I think it is this year, so.
That's right. I wanted to go back and look at your projection. Were you on the money with the
1.88, so we have actually a fairly nice growth factor this year, which will help us out, so. So
Yeah.
it's a combination of two, and then you have to look at all the exclusions, so it's really a complicated formula, which we will present when we do the budget, as you mentioned. But I just didn't want that to sit there.
Right, that's just one part of the puzzle.
Yeah, they were
Absolutely.
very interested in us being able to explain to them how our healthcare costs in any given year can eat up so much of whatever we're able
Yeah.
to spend under whatever the tax cap levy is for that year. So,
Which has been relatively good for our district based on,
reset,
Yeah.
basically.
but it's
Switched
shifting.
It's
But really, it's the pension factor that you've showed us in the long-term fiscal planning that is one of our most challenging numbers that can shift quickly. Sensitive.
Just to follow up on that, is there also any discussion about just contractual salary increases? Because that obviously is something that year over year eats up money before anything happens as well. Were people factoring that in as well, or is that not something that was?
Certainly we could circle back to that. It's at the outset, that was the ask. And a pretty simple one, I think, to put together, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other committee or liaison reports? Okay, so I have a question. I have a question about a question. Are there any questions on the consent agenda?
I did, but I don't know if we'd have to go into a very brief executive session, because I had a question that I sent belatedly in my email. I just wanted to understand it before we voted on an item.
Did you see the response?
I didn't see it. Shall I
Oh,
look? Sorry.
okay.
Haven't been looking at my emails. So other people can.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I would say if there's no questions on the consent agenda, I'd say we move forward and move to that, close our meeting, then go take our picture. If there could be questions, I would say we pause now, take our picture, and then return. But if there's no questions, we can close the meeting relatively quickly.
I do have a concern about the response, though, so.
But I'm still, I don't think it mandates, though, changing what we're going to do on the agenda, though.
Right, but I just want to note that
We
I'd
can
like to
discuss-
speak to it before we vote.
What?
I'd like to get a better understanding before I vote on one of the items, though.
So you could recess.
Okay, so then let's take a recess to take our picture, then.
Okay.
I have a motion to recess the meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go outside.
Yeah. Then why don't, can we step back and maybe modify? I'll clarify for you, just get the motion.
I don't care.
So rather than a mo,
Do you do that, or I do
Let
that?
me- yeah, can I call the meeting back to order? And I guess we'll now proceed with our consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So with that, our next meeting is here on the 28th of January at 7:30 PM. And now can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for to discuss matters pertaining to the employment history of particular persons?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.